you wouldn't support characters that are new, or you wouldn't support it to the similar degree, or all these characters were created back in the gap. So we have to kind of try to make it more reflective of the real world. So we have to race change instead of coming up with new characters because you wouldn't support. That's the excuse that they use. And these are terrible arguments. All it is a deflection to try to get the heat off of them, because people are pointing out, guys like myself, their creativity is just bankrupt. They are creatively bankrupt. But
I wanted to take this time to talk about this, and I know we've discussed this many times about the comic book industry and the manga industry, how the manga industry is overtaking the comic book industry by a large amount. Young Rippa had a great video out recently, and we'll tag a little bit of the segment that he talked about this, and it's great on some of the things he said through this. The whole video in itself, I would catch it in the description below. I'll leave the link in there for you to catch it, because he's spot on. He's spot on. I mean, I am no longer been a comic book fan for a long time now. I saw Where the Wind Was Blowing a long time ago, and I just, recently I have bought some comics, and that's from Alterna, and a couple of comics from Indiegogo, and those have been enjoyable and stuff like that. But lately, I've been buying some mangas and some light novels. I just got a couple of issues of Another World with my smartphone. I got a couple of the light novels from there. I got what was the other one? That was High Rise Invasion, Kingdom of Z, Gigantant, which is that one's a bit interesting. I hear that might be an adaptation coming for that one very soon. I want to talk about one of the top animes right now and mangas out there. It's My Hero Academia. I just started binge watching it because I knew season 5 was just about to start, and basically, I'm watching it on Hulu. Hulu gets the simulcasts of it, which I don't have to go to Funimation. I don't have to go to Crunchyroll. At least I can watch it elsewhere, give my bucks elsewhere. But that's still an issue in itself because Hulu is Disney. But when you look at My Hero Academia and you compare it to DC and Marvel Comics, this is the kind, and I'm talking My Hero Academia, this is the type of superhero series I like to see. At first it didn't really interest me. I said, I'll push it aside. I'll catch it down the line, and it'll be, I'll do it on a binge. And that's what I did. I did it as a binge. Got to season 5. I'm about 8 episodes out before going into season 5. I'll do the movies in between. So at least it keeps me everything straight and narrow. But when you look at the series, and for those of you who haven't seen this or haven't heard about this, because there are still people out there who haven't heard about this series yet, it is a story about a boy who lives in a world where pretty much 80% of the population has some sort of quirk, or they call it quirks or superheroes, mutations or something like that. And he wants to be like his favorite hero, who's called All Might.
I am here, sneaking into the back door.
All Might's teaching us?
You're looking extra muscly today, yowza!
Which I think it's an over-the-top superhero, and I love how it's portrayed in this. It is real. I mean, a lot of the superheroes are a little bit over the top, but it works. It works very well. I mean, you got guys like All Might, Eraserhead, President Mike, Power Loader, Vlad King, Gran Torino, Midnight, Snipe. I mean, there's so many. And that's the thing. There's an abundance of characters in this series. But it doesn't take away from the series. It's written so well that on occasion you'll get an episode and it follows one storyline, and then they'll drop an episode or two in of other characters, of things that are going on around this story. And that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way when you write something, when you write a good story, this is the way it should be. And taking a little bit from what Young Rippa said,
My Hero Academia was not that long ago. So why on earth can they come up with I'm talking brand new, launching entire universes, worlds that are brand new? Not to mention they're not like beating you over the head with the political or social agendas. That's never mind that. But these things are like brand new. That is every day. Like, I'm not that big into it, but every day I hear new manga, new anime. That's just a hit. And it's like watching something that I've never seen before. May it be influenced on something that happened before? Yeah, but it's like entirely new. It's a new thing. These characters, there's no predating. No, it's just new. The whole thing is just new.
And he's absolutely right. You have this whole tokenization. You have gender changes. You're either making them a different minority. You're taking one particular hero and you change the minority of it, or you make them gay, transgender. But we don't want that. That's not what we want. I mean, you say to yourself, well, we can't have enough this and minorities in this and this and that. But that's not the story. If the story itself is about the heroes, the persons that they are themselves, and you say to yourself, well, the Japanese, they're very racist and stuff like that. Yeah, there are issues in that country in itself, and that's themselves because they happen to be a very private people. But that's not an excuse to the situations that they go through. When it comes to their stories, you have to remember, their stories revolve around their country. Now, in the case of My Hero Academia, there are variations of different people in there, including of different minorities. There are a couple of characters that are of a different minority. Some characters, you don't know what they are. They could be Japanese, they could be American, they could be Russian. You don't know because some of them are behind masks and, they've blocked their faces. There's one girl that basically she's invisible through the whole entire series. You don't know. Others have animalistic features to them, or rock-like, or plant-like, or various arrangements. And getting back to the story itself, I mean, the boy, his name is Izuki Midoriya, who basically, like I said, he wants to strive to be like his favorite hero, All Might. But he doesn't have the power. But at a chance meeting, and after seeing, and what you're finding out, and a bit of a spoiler on there, All Might technically is dying. His power is not as rich as it was before, but he has the ability to transfer his power to a successor as it was transferred to him. And young Midoriya, who's Deku, gets that power. And this whole series is concerning them going to school together and dealing with the issues of going to school to learn to become a great hero and the strides that they have to go through. And then there are issues in between where you have storylines where they have to deal with supervillains. And some of the supervillains, let me tell you something. There are some amazing villains in this series, and they're all variations. There are some independent main villains. Like right now, the season I'm in, they have the gentle criminal. That's basically right now on there. And then you have Stain, and then there's a sludge villain, which is in the first season. Then you have all variations, vigilantes, certain crews, the Yakuza, which I just finished up on that story arc. And then there's the League of Villains, which is one of the most interesting of the villains in this series. Because they have the League of Villains and the Vanguard Action Squad. And they're made up by a good group that are dark, some are psychotic, some are intelligent. They're all variations of villains in this group. So one thing I love about a good comic book or manga series is the villain. Who is the villain in this? The villain is one of the major parts of a story. The villain is the one that carries the story so that the hero can save the day. And when you have someone like Shigeru, if I pronounce that right, so who's now the leader on that after the fall of All for One, which I think is also another great leader of the villain on there, but he's still manipulating it from his jail cell. And then you have others like Dabi, Twice, Toga, Mr. Compress. I love his skill and the way his flair. And then, you have others like Moonfish and Mustard and Muscular. And then, of course, you have Nomu, which is like the genetic altered people with quirks that have been genetically altered with multiple quirks so they could defeat All Might. I mean, that whole first season is fantastic. What goes on in that whole entire first season. But the reason I bring this up and where I'm at right now, like I said, we just finished the Yakuza one with Overhaul and Mimic and Boss. You look into the perspective. My Hero Academia has sold over 50 million copies of their mangas. That's fantastic. Have you heard? I mean, I haven't heard in years a comic book series selling over 1 million. Whether it's Marvel or DC. And then meanwhile, you have all these newer series that are just throughout that are... And when you look at the comic books that are coming out now, and you look at the way that they're writing, they said, oh, we've brought out new characters and all that, but you've reused the same characters, you just gender swapped them and gave them sort of new names, but not changed their powers per se. And one character is similar to what the writer looks like. She sort of written herself into a story. And this is the thing that's the stupidity. Is that you have a group of people out there that they say, well, I want to be representative. Okay. Write one yourself. Write your own story. Don't take someone else's story and ruin that story. Write one yourself. And do you know the reason why they can't write it themselves? Because they don't have the ability to create a good story for themselves.
The DCs or the Marvels of the world seem to have so much trouble, or the excuses that, well, we can't come up with creative characters that people support. Well, the Japanese don't have that problem. Maybe it's actually you. Maybe it's the people that are part of your projects. Maybe it's the creative directors. Maybe it's the writers. Maybe it's the producers. Maybe it has nothing to do with this idea that the market doesn't want that, or maybe that has nothing to do with it. Maybe it's simply you are creatively bankrupt.
They know that the stories they write, people don't want to read. They're only writing it for themselves. It's, it's like fan fiction. Some fan fiction is good, but a lot of it is just garbage, really. It's just people who I want to be in this story and this story. But it's okay, if you want to think of yourself in the story. But you got to remember one thing. People who wrote these stories took it from their imagination and created worlds where basically that are different. If you look at the manga industry, they are constantly popping out new mangas constantly. New stories, different stories. As much people say that isekai storylines are similar, yes, it is, and no, it's not, because it depends on how it is. Like I said, you have one that I enjoyed, and I'm reading the light novels now because they stopped at season 1, is Another World with My Smartphone. It's about a kid who ends up getting killed by God by accident. God sends him to another world to live and says, well, listen, I do apologize, but if you want something to go there with, what would you like? And he says, could I get my smartphone and make sure my smartphone works there? And, if I can be able to use magic and all that. And it works out for him. And it's a great story. I mean, down the line, there's supposed to be mechas, robots and stuff like that. And this is a fantasy world where basically swords and sorcery and stuff like that. And so where does the technology come into this bit? And you got to see the story to understand where the technology comes. And it's not because of him; it's because of somebody else. And then you have Mushoku Tensei, which is a fantastic, and I have to say one of the top, next to Hero Academia, one of the top animes right now. For the reason is, they're only 11 episodes in. They're taking the break and they'll be back in July. But you have someone who basically has died, who primarily didn't have a good life, and now is born into a new life. Now, and mostly when you know isekai, you're there and you're an adult or you're a young person, depending on what storyline you think about it. You go to this new world and you're yourself. This time around, he's born into this world as a child, and we watch him grow up. On top of that, he still has his memories of his old life. So some of the things he's gone through in his life, like he was a shut-in, he had issues, about women, how it handled women and stuff like that. Those are still with him. But he's beginning to see the change in him. And the story is escalating real nicely. Now, you go back to what Marvel and DC have been putting out. You've had several of their issues canceled. You've had a lot of their movies on the chopping block right now. You have the New Gods. That one's been canceled. There was another Aquaman spinoff, which was supposed to be a horror. That's been canceled. They're trying to destroy the Snyderverse, which I don't really care nonetheless. I mean, I'm just very disappointed on how DC has been handling it. You see from the TV series, Batwoman dying out. I mean, it's about they'll probably lose another 100,000 probably in the next episode. They're losing people left and right. You had people lose interest in the Superman Lois time slot because basically they had to stop at episode 5 because of the some issues they had with COVID, but they'll be back in a couple weeks, and they replaced it with Supergirl, and they pretty much lost a couple of 100,000 viewers because of that. They thought, oh, we'll put it in that time, in the Superman time slot, and we'll still contain. No, you lost a lot. You lost a lot of viewers. You lost a good chunk of your viewers. And you see the comic book industry is just continuing to die out. I mean, it literally, I mean, you even have Star Wars comics that are atrocious. The High Republic, you made a character out of a rock, not a person that's a rock with legs and stuff like that. I mean, let's put it into this perspective. There's a character on My Hero Academia, and he is sort of, I think, concrete. It is Cementos. He happens to be the literary teacher in this, but he's got arms, he's got a head, he's a slab, but he's got a face, but yet High Republic, this thing has no arms, no legs. How does it get around? How does it drive a ship? This is the stupidity that it happens to be. You have a great assortment of characters in My Hero Academia. It is a good amount. You could do a lot of stories, a lot of mini spin-offs in this series, which they have done. I mean, there have been storylines with the Froggy Girl, the Asusi. And there's been other storylines with Todoroki, who happens to be half ice, half fire. And some of the fight scenes that go on are sort of resembling sort of episodes of Dragon Ball, where basically they focus on one particular fight while several other fights are going on. But then again, that's always in this universe, anime. You don't want to focus on one fight all the time. You want to give several other fights in between and show what's going on there. You don't want to stay with that one fight for 4 episodes, which, in the Yakuza arc, I think that lasted about 4 or 5 episodes, if I'm not mistaken. But they didn't focus on the one particular fight. They focused mainly everyone trying to get to save the girl. There was like a heiress, I think it's heiress or area in this, who has the ability to reverse time. And it's sort of the kind of, if she touches you, if you have an injury, it can remove the injury, reverse it to a point on there. But also she can pretty much erase you out of history. In other words, people will remember you, but you disintegrate. In other words, you reverse back to a point where you don't exist anymore. And that's an interesting power, and I want to see what goes on with that, because the point I'm at is spoilers, they've rescued her, and I think she's going to be introduced into the series for a little bit as well, because they're doing let's see, what arc am I in now? In the arc where I think they're planning some festival right now, and they want to bring her to the festival so she would smile again. But that is the stories that happen in this. You have variations. I mean, meanwhile, while they're trying to rescue her, you have other heroes like Hiroshima, who's made, he hardens. Him and another hero go after several others, and there's a whole battle scene, which is like, it's fantastic that it goes on. And it's well done. And then you get to see what's going on above, because basically you're going into an underground bunker, but also there's fighting going on in the street level with heroes, villains, and the police. So there are whole variations of what's going on. So you say to yourself, why is manga and anime doing very well? It's because they know how to write a story. They know how to continue a story. Sometimes it doesn't work well. You get a season 1 out of it or a season 2. you have exactly what happened to The Promised Neverland, where basically it failed on the season 2. Where you had a complete failure. Or you have a success of a 5th season of My Hero Academia, which is done fantastic. Very popular. A lot of people love this series because it has good heroes. It's got a good set of villains. There's no wokeness to it. It's just straight driven action, straight driven drama, comedy, all variations of what a manga and an anime should have. And it's beating out what we have here in the West. So take it for what it is now. And when you look at something, when you go out and you want to buy something that you want to read or something like that, take a perusing over in the manga section of your store. And you'll notice that basically the shelves are getting more populated with stories of this nature. Take in a manga. Take in an anime that you may have not seen before. I know that some people say, I don't like that Japanese thing and stuff like that. Take it in. Because there are some good ones out there. It's all for these fanboys and stuff like that. Let me tell you something. You know what's the best thing about manga and anime? There's something there for everyone. The comic book industry used to be this way. Everyone was representative in the best way possible. You have mangas that are rom-coms, fantasy, action, dramatic, horror, and yes, there are ones for the LGBT community as well. There are ones out there. There are ones that are pornographic. There are ones that are ultra-violent. They're all variations. They're all subject matters are not taboo when it comes to Japan. When you hear stuff like Redo the Healer, which is out now, just finished up on their season, and people say, oh, that, but yet it's popular with women. And you have to ask yourself, well, why is it catered to the women? Women might like to see something of that nature of what's going on in this case. This is a revenge situation. They might like the category that this falls under. I know for a fact, years ago, a lot of the Japanese women used to love a lot of the gay men's stories, the dramas that they used to have in those mangas, and the couple of animes that they used to put out. And they still do make these animes and mangas. There are a variation of them. So when it comes down to it, maybe we should just put DC and Marvel to rest and not pay for their tickets anymore, not buy their stuff anymore, and maybe they'll learn to the point where, hey, what have we done wrong? Well, you hire political people, you hire people that have no experience in the business, that just want to put their own politics into a product that's had its fan base for decades. And then when the fan base comes to criticize it, you push them away, you call them white supremacists, you call them Nazis, you call them this, that, and you basically, the companies allow the employees to do this. You know, if I was an employee and I did in a company years ago, if I did what they're doing now, I'd be fired on the spot. You never insult your customer. Those are the people who pay your paycheck. You pay your bills. They're the ones who, if you own the company, they're the ones that you earn money off of. And you're discouraging them from buying your product. So you reach this part of the video. Thank you for tuning in. Comment below as you like. Hit that subscribe, like, share this video, hit that notification bell, Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye now.
I'm turning his forms in right now.
I am here in a bizarre position.